Greetings. Welcome to today's episode of Sage-onomics. Today, I want to talk about the internalized fear of a Black or African uprising. And I'm sure by now most of you have seen the video of that European saying that they don't steal Africa's resources anymore, that it's our own elites who are robbing us, and he also galvanizes Europeans against a future war against Africa. In my opinion, I don't think he's as ignorant as he seems to be. I think he knows exactly what he's doing. So let's look at the video and break down exactly what he says point by point.
If you've been on TikTok for a while, you must have heard about a ton of Africans telling you that Europeans stole Africa's resources. Now, there's a lot to say about that. First and foremost, most of these resources are still in Africa, and they're not being stolen by Europeans. They're actually being sold to Europeans by the African state leadership. Your own elites are robbing you. It's not us doing it, not anymore. The real issue, of course, is why aren't Africans using their own resources to do things? Why does Mr. Beast have to go to Kenya to build water wells? Why didn't the Kenyan government do it themselves? I suppose the Kenyan government could have done it themselves. They just chose not to do it. Nigeria is now a country of almost 220 million people, the largest country in Africa. But they only produce about 10% of the electricity that a small country like Hungary. Hungary only has 10 million people, but they produce 10 times as much electricity as Nigeria does. I mean, I know you want to have your Wakanda, right? But do you expect white people to give it to you? No, you're supposed to build it yourself. Having said all this, it is of course obvious that we Europeans in the north need to prepare for a possible, potential African rise in terms of technology and therefore also in terms of military capacity. And that means we in Europe need to already start looking ahead and thinking ahead about how we are going to win the war against Africa, because there will be a future war between Europe and Africa.
Honestly, this guy is so insufferable. In fact, let me take off my glasses because I want you to see my eyes as I say this. Europeans did and still do steal Africa's resources. And though there is still plenty in the ground, your countries and corporations continue to plunder with impunity. A study by the UN in the United Nations Conference on Trade and Development states gold accounted for 77% of total under-invoiced exports worth $40 billion in 2015. And these are conservative estimates, by the way. It goes on to say, the truth is that such plans are devised by the former colonial rulers with the help of bureaucrats in Africa, calling Africa a net creditor to the world, echoing economists' observations that the aid-reliant continent is actually a net exporter of capital because of such fraudulent practices. If we look at the Democratic Republic of Congo, looting has been going on since the 1800s. The Congolese have been under perpetual strangulation by imperial powers, and they compromise local leaders that only serve the interest of themselves and their Western masters. The report continues. Ever since the people of Africa encountered Europeans, Africa has given everything and the West still wants more. Where will the West be without Africa? They take everything from cocoa to timber to platinum, gold, diamonds, and oil. Many Western countries have no natural resources and are completely dependent on Africa. Yet we hear their claims time and time again that Africa needs them. The French imperialists being the most arrogant of all. Now look at them, shaking in their boots at the revolution that's going on in West Africa. Yes, it is true. Our own elites are robbing us. But they're doing it at the behest of Western countries and corporations. They're nothing but puppets. Many African leaders are in power through the help of imperial and colonial masters, who have systematically corrupted Africa. And when a good leader stands up to that tyranny, he is quickly dispatched. Very soon I'm going to do a deep dive of all the African leaders who have been assassinated. So be sure to tune in for that. That same report states, illicit financial flows rob Africa and its people of their prospects, undermining transparency and accountability, and is eroding the trust in financial institutions. The constitutions in most countries, written with guidance from imperial and colonial masters, have no checks and balances, and hence no accountability. These constitutions serve not the people, but the political thugs in power. And that's why we find it challenging to build our Wakanda. Do you see how condescending he is when he talks about Wakanda? Feigning ignorance as if he doesn't know that the West needs Africa. Africa does not need them. The truth of the matter is, they will not let us build our Wakanda. The thought of a free, fair, and just Africa is a nightmare to Western imperialists. When they close their eyes at night, they are plagued by the nightmares of the boogeyman. To them, the boogeyman is a phantom born of slavery and theft of our resources. A fear embedded in the DNA of an unjust society, grounded in the recognition that orchestrated and professionalized violence will not be enough to preserve the shaky foundations of racial hierarchy. And indeed, it will not be enough, for the spirit of revolution will never die. I hate to use buzzwords, but it is obvious he's trying to gaslight Africans, while at the same time galvanizing Europeans against an ill-perceived threat. This is nothing more than a false pretext to war. He realizes that Europe, and indeed the West, is on a declining trend, especially as it pertains to the population. Europeans have drunk the proverbial Kool-Aid for so long. The Kool-Aid being the hubris in their belief that they are superior. Europe has an average age of 45 years old and getting older, while the average age of Africa is 19 years old and getting younger. White supremacists have known and feared an African uprising for a very long time, which is why they carry out eugenics programs in Africa all the time, from AIDS to Ebola and even the most recent COVID-19. I can't even mention the actual name of this platform without incurring some kind of penalty. So much for free speech, am I right? We heard so many of these white supremacists openly talking about how they should use Africans as guinea pigs for their experimental drugs. The mainstream media was saying things like Africa wasn't affected the way we expected. It's an interesting choice of words, expected. Let me translate that for you. They actually planned to wipe out more Africans than they did. But luckily, Africa as a whole are still more holistic than Western continents. We still use herbs and remedies that our matriarchs taught us, and that's what kept us healthy for the most part. Back to his call for war preparedness. I haven't met a single African in my lifetime who wants vengeance for the atrocities committed against us. However, if you threaten us with violence, we will fight back with extreme prejudice, and that is a promise. So it's very simple. You stay in your lands and take nothing from us. We stay in our lands and take nothing from you. And we can all live as one happy global family, where we trade resources and goods fairly. And I'm sure I speak for most Africans when I say we will welcome anyone who has benign intentions to our lands. We are, in fact, one big global family, and some, if not most, Westerners understand this. It is absolutely possible for us to live in harmony with each other, where we all get what we need to thrive and survive. But that starts with Western countries paying market value for our resources, creating win-win scenarios for everyone in the world. But so long as the scales of justice are disproportionately tipped in the Western world's favor, there will always be cause for revolution. Thank you so much for joining me on this episode of Sage-onomics. Be sure to check back soon for more conversations and deep dives into African affairs. And please like, subscribe, and share to help the channel grow and reach an even greater audience. And comment your thoughts down below and let me know if I missed any. Peace, love, and light to you all.